Hello and welcome to a new lesson on how to install Pritunl on Ubuntu 22. For more details about Pritunl, visit pritunl.com. Documentation is available at docs.pritunl.com/docs. You can also access the documentation from the main homepage of pritunl.com by clicking Documentation. In documentation, you will find all the details and instructions you need about installing and configuring Pritunl, including advanced topics. Now, let's return to the home page of Pritunl and let's scroll down to the Install section. This section provides instructions for installing Pritunl on various Linux distributions. I will be installing and configuring Pritunl on Ubuntu 22, but feel free to select a different Linux distro. After selecting Ubuntu 22, I will find the commands to execute on Ubuntu to install Pritunl. Let's open our terminal. I have created a virtual machine on Amazon Web Service to serve as my Pritunl VPN server. The first command we will execute together is to configure the host name on this machine. So let's type sudo hostname ctl set-host name, then vpn.linuxdirection.com, then -- static. Next, let's verify our new host name by executing hostnamectl. As you can see from the output, the static host name is vpn.linuxdirection.com. You can also execute hostname to print out the machine's hostname. As you see, hostnamectl provides more information about the machine, such as virtualization type, operating system, and system architecture. I own the linuxdirection.com domain and have created the subdomain vpn.linuxdirection.com, then created an A record for it to point to the public IP of this virtual machine on Amazon Web Service. You can install and configure Pritunl without a domain name, but in my use case, I will configure Pritunl with SSL to securely access the dashboard. Now let's update the system with sudo apt update. Going back to the Pritunl homepage, I will copy the commands under the install section to install Pritunl. I will pause the video until I finish the installation following these instructions. It is just a matter of copying and pasting commands, so I will see you in a moment. I am back. I have installed Pritunl and MongoDB following the installation instructions on pritunl.com. Now let's start the Pritunl and MongoDB services. So let's execute sudo systemctl start Pritunl, then MongoDB. Now let's enable these services to start automatically when the system boots. So I will execute the same command, but I will provide enable instead of start. Having installed the Pritunl and started the necessary services, if you want to follow best practices, which is advisable, you should separate MongoDB from the Pritunl server. This means having another virtual machine for MongoDB or using a managed MongoDB service. More information on separating MongoDB and Pritunl can be found in the Pritunl documentation. Now let's open a web browser and navigate to the public IP of the Pritunl server or virtual machine. You will see a security warning, which is normal in this case. Click Advanced, then accept the risk and continue. Of course, only do this for URLs you trust. We now have the Pritunl database setup screen. The setup key is required. There is a command to execute on the Pritunl server to get this key. So let's copy the command. Now let's open the terminal and let's provide the sudo Pritunl setup key. Now press enter. After obtaining the key, so let's first copy the key, and let's go back to the browser. Now paste the key here. Also, you will need to provide the MongoDB URI. In our case, we will just click Save since MongoDB is on the same virtual machine as Pritunl. With that done, we reach the Pritunl login page. Pritunl provides a command to retrieve the default username and password. Let's copy that command. Now let's go back to the terminal and I will provide the sudo pritunl default-password command. Now press enter. Now I have the administrator default password and the default username, so I will copy them to a safe place. Now back in the browser, let's enter the username and password. So the username is Pritunl and the password I will paste it here, then click sign in. We are now at the initial setup, which we will cover in the next lesson. That brings us to the end of this lesson. Thank you for watching and see you in the next lesson.